So by the time I was 15 or 16, 17, I had read all these things, the Catholic things. You have Saint Teresa of Avila. So, and lived on a moor, basically. So obviously I was living in another world, basically. I was reading about these contemplatives. The school that we went to was in Loch Ness. And the end of Loch Ness, they have this Fort Augustus, built by the British to control the Scots. And then it became the Duke of Argyll gave it to the Benedictine monks, and anyway, it was a school over there. So when I was about 12, living in the school, boarding school they called it, and the priest said to us, you kids begin thinking what you're going to say to the good Lord when you're 18. At the moment, you've got to guide yourself. It was interesting, for example, when the headmasters of all the schools in England, they got together, they asked, what is your school designed for? And the Benedictine says, well, we're preparing for death. And that's it. It should be, that's exactly what education should be. And they said, look, you've got to prepare yourself. And you've got to work out your life. So when you get to the age of 18, well, I'm now 89. So when you get to the age of 18 and you pop off, you're standing in front of the Almighty, and he said, what did you do with your life? I gave you a hand, and so you've got to begin thinking. So I said, well, what does the good Lord want? He said, prayer and penance. I said, okay, where is the strictest order of prayer and penance? I said, okay, it was kind of logic. I said, oh, okay. They said the Carthusians. Okay, who are the Carthusians? Well, the Carthusians was about 800 years ago. There was a count called Bruno. He was going to be the Bishop of Cologne in Germany. And then he decided, well, actually, what we need here in Cologne, Germany, is prayer and penance. So he went. I went there. It's in Avignon, south of France. He went down there, and it was, you could. Oh my God Almighty! It's right up on the mountain, freezing cold, and then he sat down, and they got on with prayer and penance. They called it the St. Hugh's Charterhouse. It's a sort of square of 12, 12, 12, 12. So there was a 36. You have. It's a little house. You have 4 little rooms, and you don't speak the whole week. The only time you speak is when you go out for a walk. Then you go to bed at about 9. You get up at 11 o'clock, and you've got 3 or 4 hours. And in the freezing church, there's no heating, and we're doing the breathing. Vespers and all that. Oh, everything was in Latin, And I think they managed to keep the austerity and the original character of the order, because when I got there, I'd only been there. I was still in my civvies, as they say. I was just jacket and things, and I hadn't become a postulant. Well, I was a postulant. I hadn't become a novice. I suppose I was a postulant. But anyway, suddenly 2 old priests came in. They said, "Would you tell us everything about what life here is, all the bad things?" I said, "Well, how can I? I've just come here. I've only come here a few weeks." And they said, "Just a minute." So they said, "Is the food okay? Is the singing okay? Whatever." And apparently, this is how they've managed to. One of the ways they've managed to keep the primitive idea of 800 years. So it's still as strict as it ever was, because every 2 years, 2 monks go. I mean, there only are in the whole world. There only are about the maximum 15 Charterhouses, and they have 15 Charterhouses, and they say, "Well, look, you can tell us everything." So what happens is, you get in other words, if there's any problem, I think that the problem they had that time was they said the singing was wrong or something like that. So if there's singing, some scandal, or the food, or anything, it was ferreted out. And I was thinking, there's so many organizations, if they had a system, even now, for example, in this church, I'm sitting in this church nearly 30 years, and nobody's come to, and everybody's, we can't criticize the priest. You can't. And I always said, look, the more you criticize, the better. Because we need to, because, people, if somebody looks at me, they can see me clear in a way that I can see myself. So what's wrong with me? And so I remember a guy, he was, his old friend had come from somewhere or other, and he said, "Oh, my friend, you know you're dying now, but I also wanted to tell you, you know, you've got a terrible character. You're always blaming people. He said, why didn't you tell me before? I'm dying now. What was the point? So we should have something like that in all the organizations and also in the churches. Every 2 years you come, okay, is that priest, what's he up to? What is he doing? Is he fervent? Is he a good guy or a bad guy? Whatever it is, you know. But anyway, so the whole point about the contemplative life this is called contemplation. But of course you can't switch on contemplation. Contemplation is basically our lives. We were created to look at God, to share God's life. So basically what you're doing in there is you're anticipating heaven. So you go to this place, so there are huge big high walls around, and I didn't, nothing. The world disappeared, absolutely disappeared. I remember when I came out after, because I was in two, was the Benedictines in the north and Carthusians in the south. And when I eventually got out of the place, it happened to be Yul Brynner was the guy, and he had a big, all my head was shaved and all that stuff. So I saw the cars going up and down, and because in this place, it's out there, I don't know what it is. So even today, when I walk along the road and I see the cars whizzing up, and I say, what on earth are they doing? And it's worth it. Stop the car. What are you doing? Where are you going? Don't bother me. I'm going home to get my work. Well, so most of us, I think it's just worth considering. What are we doing? And every day, we should stop and think. What am I doing? What's the whole thing about? So the contemplative life is this anticipatory paradise. So even though it was absolutely freezing cold, absolute hell, and I left because my eyes, you had to reading these, just a little garden, saying that, praying, and reading all this, breathing, everything in Latin, so my eyes are kind of burnt out. But the point is, at least you were in another world. So when I came out, when I realized that we are built for heaven. We are built for the contemplative life. And we're not built to just, making computers and living that's not a life. That's a life of a machine. Anyway, that's it. Okay.